Men are not the enemy. We have been sold this whole narrative about who men are, and none of it's true. Why were we sold this lie, and who sold it to us? Hi, welcome back to Far From Eden. Well, the puppeteers, the overlords, the people who craft the narrative, make the propaganda, they sold us the lie. They want division between men and women. That's clear. And because they want to break up the family, basically. And that's the best way to do that. They also want to lower the birth rate because depopulation and stuff. Hope you were ready for some wrong think, because I just gave you a bunch of it, a la 1984. But a lot of people, the reason I'm saying this right now is a lot of people have come at me and like, you hate women and this, that, and the other. And no, I don't, not at all. Quite the contrary, you know? And I want to make that clear, but I need to make clear, men are not your enemy. They're really not. And the reason, this is why I think the lie worked. Why did it work, right? Why were we so ready to believe all these things about men, that they're oppressors, that they are against us, that they want to chain us in the kitchen, etc.? Why did we believe all that? Well, because it sort of abdicates us from accountability in a sense. And I guess that can feel good, you know? And it also abdicated us from something else, something really important. We no longer had to really pay attention to men and really learn who you are, right? And that's a problem for me, because when I started really seeing you guys about 10 years ago, I'd say, I was astonished at how little I really knew and how little I really understood about you, how you operate, how you think, right? Because you're so different from us. And we tend to look at you guys as if you're so similar to us, and it's not true. So we judge you based on that. You're not being emotive enough. You don't express your feelings the way we think you should, etc. For example, he spends all his time at work. He doesn't spend time with me. It's possible he's at work because he wants you guys to be secure. He's thinking about the future, retirement, all that stuff. He's got all that in his mind, long-term things. And so it's not that he wants to be away from you. It's not that he doesn't want to spend time with you. It's that he understands that he has this responsibility and this duty to go to work, right? And that's huge. I don't know why we downplay the importance of, one day we're going to have to retire. There may be a huge medical crisis, right? All kinds of things. We can be really focused on the here and now, what I want right now. What I've learned in my experience is that men are really good at long-term thinking, cost-benefit ratio. And sometimes that can almost be too much. I'm not going to lie. Like, we can all go too far one way, right? But I feel like the scales have tipped in the direction of the feminine, right? And we don't have the balance of the masculine anymore, because that's bad. That's this, that's oppressive, etc. It's scary. I'd rather choose the bear, right? And that's not the case. Most men are good. Most men are good men. Women can get some bad experiences in their early dating because they don't know who to pick. And maybe they pick the most forward one, the most whatever. And maybe that's the right guy. And maybe they pick a bad one, right? And then they get hurt. And then we tend to just think that's what all men are. It's not the case at all, right? So, and it's completely unfair. It's completely unfair. And what I have noticed is that when I talk to a woman and I remind them of men in their lives that whom they love, whether it's a son, the son is really important because she's going to love her son, right? And I think, and I predicted, I don't know, 4 years ago, 5 years ago almost now, that when these inequalities towards men start to affect the sons of these women, for example, for example, if a son has a child with a woman, right? A son of a woman has a child with another woman, right? A girlfriend, a wife, whatever. And the baby mama, I hate using that phrase, but it's in our lexicon now and it's almost needed with all these, different situations, out of wedlock pregnancies. When that woman attempts to withhold the child, extort money, falsely accuse, these are all things that commonly happen in family court, right? When the mother of the baby daddy sees this happening, she's now awakened to what women can do to men. She's now awakened to the atrocity of the family court system. And that's important because now you've got the mother, maybe she's overbearing, we can be that way. Maybe she's overbearing of her son, but actually it works in our favor, in our favor, meaning the ones who stand up for men and point out these injustices. It's in our favor that the mother of the baby daddy fights against, the baby mama accusing and stuff like that. Because now you've really got woman versus woman. And what's a court to do? And you might say, well, the court wants to extort the money. Yeah, but it makes it harder. Because now it's not man versus woman. Now the man has another woman in his corner saying, he didn't do that. This is what's happening. This is what she's doing. And it, unfortunately, and it shouldn't be this way, it carries more weight. And I said several years ago in a men's rights meeting I was in, I said, I think when all these things start to really affect the sons of women, we might see a bit of a shift. And I'll tell you what is all over YouTube. And 2020 with, things needing to be on Zoom and etc., like court kind of helped too, because now all over YouTube are family court cases. And it's probably because of what I choose, but there's so many thumbnails that say, mother accuses such and such, right? People want to watch it, but it's getting out there, right? This was completely hidden only several years ago, right? People would laugh at you if you tried to say that, family court was unfair to men. They, it's a conspiracy theory, right? Like all the other conspiracy theories, you just need some time. And the truth will bubble up to the surface. And it has. Because now, if you say it to the general public, you're not going to get shut down immediately. I know because I do it. I test the waters in real life. I ask questions in real life. I'm a bit of a psycho that way, talk to the mailman about, situations and getting bossed around at work by his female boss in ways that you just wouldn't see a male boss doing normally, right? Because he can't get away with that. Getting away with stuff has not helped us. Letting people get away with things that are negative doesn't help the person that's doing it, honestly, because it takes you down a road of blaming everybody else and not holding yourself accountable. Therefore, you don't do better, right? And I look at the mental health crisis. I'm a firm believer that we have all these disorders because we're living out of God's order. And a big part of that is because men and women have been pitted against each other. And a lot of people think that's what the mgtow movement is, right? Mgtow is just the opposite of feminism. And I even thought that, like, when I was learning all this stuff, I thought that too. And then guess what I did? So crazy. I listened to the men who said, we're going our own way. I looked at the comments. I talked to real ones who do it. You know what I found out? They don't hate women. They don't at all. Now, they're angry at the situation and they might be sick and tired of some stuff and they might, red pill rage is real. But generally speaking, most of them do not hate women, do not even disparage women. They just do the cost-benefit ratio thing and they think long-term and they go, I don't really want to lose all my stuff. And I don't really want to have kids just to lose them or have them be alienated against me. Or maybe they're like, yeah, I'd like to have a wife and kids, but the type of wife I would want isn't really out there. And that's not hatred. That's not wanting to force anybody. That's just saying, well, the preferences I have are just not there. And that's completely fair. Did any of the women ever consider that maybe they didn't want to walk away? Maybe they did it as a last resort. That they've tried dating and they've looked for, what they'd like in a wife. And they just, they couldn't find it. So they said, all right, then, I guess it's not for me. I know men like this. I do. And there's quite a few men too who came to mgtow with, not even thinking of the word, right? Or even before anybody ever uttered the word. Because maybe, their wife divorced them. And they were just left devastated. Even if for somehow they came out of it not financially devastated, or maybe their children weren't even alienated from them. But it's completely the worst thing ever. I have a close family friend that I love dearly. His wife cheated on him, filed for divorce. And they had a daughter, and he had a stepchild with her that really never knew his dad. I know, you guys, red flag, but he didn't know. And he went into the relationship with good faith. He tried his best. He admits he was not perfect in any stretch of the imagination, because what I have found is that in the men that I've talked to, they're always looking at the relationship and realizing what they did, where they weren't perfect or what have you. Because in my experience, and I realize it's not about me and all my experiences, but honestly, at this point now, I've heard from a lot of men, and I will just say that they do understand that it takes two to tango, right? But the difference is that they weren't going to, you know, bail on the family. They knew better to stay intact and keep just, you know, trudging it out than to break it. And I think they're correct. I don't think that the whole thing, well, if I'm not happy, then the kids aren't going to be happy. I think that depends on your behavior, right? And I would like to think that we're all in control of our behavior and our attitudes. And I think it's really empowering once you figure that out. I think that as women, we do better when we say, hey, you know what? I control my emotions. Yeah, things affect me, but at the end of the day, I'm in charge of my behavior and my emotions. What kind of person do I want to be? Do I want to just be the person that's affected by things and I react to them? Or do I want to be a person that's intentional with my behavior and how I approach things? I think that that contributes good things to your relationship, you know? And I think we need to learn that when we're young. When we're not taught that when we're young, we just have no idea. We have no idea, and we don't. It's like you don't know what you don't know, right? And I'm not trying to make excuses, but anyway, back to my family member. Sorry, not he's not a friend. He's a family member. Anyway, I was smiling because he would have been like, "What? What are you talking about?" Anyway, he said he's not afraid of anything now. It's been probably about 6 years, I think, since, the family was busted apart. And bless you. By the way, hit like on this video. Let's get it all over so men and women can come together and understand each other a little bit more. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It really helps. And thank you. My dog sneezed, so it reminded me. So he said that, he's talking about his job and how much better he's doing now. And, he's not afraid to, put himself out there, take more risks, right? He's more confident with his experience. And he said it's because he's not afraid of anything now. Because what he went through with his family being taken from him and the possibility of his children being taken from him was the worst thing that he could ever imagine. The worst pain, the worst fear that he could ever imagine, worse than anything. So now, in a way, realizing that he said he has peace now because he knows he's been through that and he made it. And now what can possibly be scary? Now, I will say he had an incident just a few days ago, where his daughter was a little bit lost in the mall, couldn't, they were trying to figure out where each other was, and it's one of her first times being out on her own, and he was terrified, as any father would be, right? So obviously there's that. But as far as what he goes through in life, he was he's a funny guy, he's positive, he's smiling, we're always joking together, but he got deadly serious. And he said, no, I can do anything now because I made it through that. And thankfully, he had support from family. And he was able to say to her, you take my kids away, we'll go to court, and I will just take us both down. And so he has a good situation with his children. But it doesn't change the fact that he was in a position for a while, at least a year or two, where he thought he was going to lose them all. And talking to Redonkulous, he said the same thing. It's the scar that doesn't heal. He was a Green Beret, jumping out of airplanes and stuff like that, and losing, brothers in arms. And he said, seeing your children twice a month and having your family broken up is a scar that never heals. Terrence Pop. He does important work over there at Redonkulous. So yeah, over and over again, that's the message. And so when you listen to these men and you hear what they have to say from their hearts, which, contrary to popular belief with a lot of women, is that their hearts are huge. Their capacity for love is astounding. It's almost like they're made in the image of somebody. It's almost like that. Weird, right? Honestly, the more I study you guys, I mean, I kind of do. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of obvious that you're made in his image. Like, duh, I see it now. But that's who these men are. They don't hate the women. They just don't. You got it. And of course, like I said, the overlords want women to think that that's what men think. They want you to think that. And if you don't think that I'm telling the truth, well, let me just show you that they think that. They think that men actually hate them. We got to go to Chick Talk over here to
Very serious question. Why are men so hateful towards like young women existing? Like the posts that are like, oh, if she was at a Halloween party last night, that's not your girl. Is it projection? Like this whole narrative that like if you're outside of the house, you're doing something wrong? Because legitimately speaking, the girls that I
if she was at the library, she's outside of the house. It's not that. And he doesn't hate you. He wants a woman who is maybe less exhibitionary. Is that a word? Like, perhaps that's it. He didn't, just because they say, hey, I'd rather not have that type person. I mean, you could be like, if he's in a biker gang, he's not your guy. Does that mean you hate men? No. They take it as you hate them if you're not okay with everything they do. And if they want you, you have to accept them. And if you don't accept them and everything they do, well, you must hate them. And but how? Like, I just don't have words for that. They don't hate you. They don't. They want a woman. You know what? It's the opposite. Many of them, most of them, I will go out on a limb and you guys correct me if I am wrong. Most of them want a woman that is chaste and wants a family and only wants one man. And because they want that one woman, not to own her, not to control her, but because those are her values, right? He wants a woman with a certain set of values. And a woman with those set of values is not going out and being an exhibitionist. Fair. Completely fair. I personally was one of those girls who was shy, didn't like to go out, go to parties. I feel embarrassed if I dress. I wouldn't even wear that shirt. You know what I mean? And that's just me. Doesn't make me better, maybe, than the party type girls. But that's just the thing, is like, not all women, I said it, not all women want to go out and be like that. And we live in a free country. You're completely free to do that, ma'am. And you're very pretty, by the way. I think you're pretty. Anyway, you're free to do that. That's your choice. But guess what? The men are free to want a different type. Okay, let's continue with her wisdom.
I know. When we go out, like, we're literally just taking pictures and talking and having fun. Why is that such a problem? I am literally begging.
Where are you posting the pictures? And for what reason? Getting attention? Many men would rather a woman who doesn't want or need the attention from people. And it is their right to prefer that, just as it is your right to go out and take pictures. Go ahead, do your thing. But just be aware that not all men are going to want that as their wife. And I think she's going to talk about that here in just a second. If I could be quiet and stop criticizing her.
You guys, make sure that when you get into a relationship, that it is not with someone who literally hates you, and with someone who doesn't think that, like, the Halloween costume you're wearing dictates whether or not you're going to be someone's wife in the future, or whether or not your father loves you. Because keep in mind that those are the same men paying for only subscriptions every.
You don't know that? Look, I'm not the one to stand up for corn, prawn, whatever friendly name we're using for it. I will not stand up to that. But I will say, I do have compassion for men who are having trouble finding a woman for their wife or whatever that they want to be serious about. And I also have compassion for the men that are suffering from touch starvation and who have been rejected because the women don't want an average man, don't want a blue collar man, whatever it is they don't want. But we don't call them hateful. There are no articles about that. I didn't find any TikToks about that. Weird. That's weird. But, you know, it's just kind of like, I want to do what I want to do, and I don't want there to be any kind of consequences. And yeah, he's perfectly capable of saying, my future wife wouldn't do that. It does not mean he hates you. I think that that's a way to, I think she literally believes it, though. I mean, she believes it. But this propaganda has been handed to her so that she can say, oh, I should be able to do whatever I want, behave however I want, and still get whatever I want from men. And if I don't, it's because he's bad. It's because man bad. This whole propaganda about men are bad, this, that, and the other, when it gets into your mind and then they say something you don't like, oh, I already have the answer. It's because he's bad. It's like, no, maybe there's maybe something in you. We're not allowed to say that. But if you look at the dynamic between men and women, men want things in women. Men have preferences. Women have preferences. And it's like, if we're all about the freedom and being able to do what you want and, go wherever you want, dress however you want, go whatever career you want, more power to you. Just understand that it might not be what men want in a wife, and it doesn't mean that they hate women at all. It doesn't. I don't find articles of men, saying bad things and disparaging women. They would like to be able to find a woman that they align with their values, and that's their frustration, but they don't hate you. They really don't. And I wish I wish that they knew that they're being fed utter lies through the propaganda, through the movies, through true crime. You're fed a certain narrative so that when something goes wrong, you're already primed. You're primed, man, bad. And think about it. The judges, the lawyers, they've all had that propaganda too. They're people too. So right away, when they see a case and they say an accusation, I like to think this is starting to change a little bit because we have equality. But they immediately go, oh, well, that's probably true because, man, bad. But men are not the enemy. Women are not the enemy either. We are not enemies. We're not. It's the puppet masters who want us against each other. Again, it's not just break up the family, it's divide and conquer. I hate to reference this part of a movie, but there's a part in the movie Catching Fire. That's the second installment of Hunger Games. I know, propaganda. This is back when I watched propaganda. However, there's a scene where Katniss, the star, the strong female, is getting ready to shoot a bow and arrow towards a person because, the districts are going against each other, right? He looks at her and he says, Katniss, remember who the real enemy is. She thinks about it for a second and she realizes, oh, it's President Snow. It's the government, basically, right? The puppet masters who are pitting the districts against each other. And it's exactly that. The men and women are, right? She's believing the propaganda. He's seeing the behaviors he does not like. He's getting the short end of the stick. So, and why? Because who does it benefit? Qui bono, right? That's Latin for that, right? Rojas. Did I say it right? He's our linguistics guru of the chat. Who benefits? Not women, not men. It's easy for men to say, well, the women have all the privileges and they're benefiting, but we're not. We're not happy with our situations. And as we age, and many of us will be alone, as defiant as we are to admit it, I see it with my own eyes in real life. Being a, sort of former equestrian, I still dabble a bit. I know a lot of older women who are alone. And I say former equestrian because a lot of times the crazy horse girls, if they become horse women, they're still obsessed with the horses. They put the horses above everything else. And I'm sure there are other passions that are similar. And therefore, they're not putting their relationships, and that means with friends too, and other family members, they're not putting their relationships first. And because of that, people walk away, relationships fail. Anyways, we better let her finish. Let me finish. I'm speaking. And I have another one after this to show you more about how there's just such misunderstanding. But I just want to keep drilling the point that neither one of us are benefiting. And I'll tell you more about the old horse ladies that are winding up alone because they didn't prioritize their relationships in a minute.
Every single month. Might be projection. I don't know. Very serious question. Why are men so hateful?
Why is it hard to make the TikTok people be quiet? That's a question. All right, where's the other one? I think it's this girl.
I don't care what you guys say. This is a subtle sign that he is an asshole and that you should immediately run. This one's petty, but I swear it's true. If you send him a photo of you where you're like looking nice and a nice photo for him, and you send it over and he responds with only emojis, no words, or even worse, if no emojis, no words, and he just likes it or loves it, puts a heart on it, that is a sure sign he's a low effort man who doesn't deserve you. I don't care. I believe it. I stand by this. Every single guy that has done this to me has turned out to be an asshole and not worth my time. I don't care what you guys.
This is what I'm saying. The fact that she can judge his character kind of based off of how he responds to a picture you send him in the middle of the day. He just puts a heart on it, or he puts an emoji or whatever. That means he's a low effort. What if he's working really hard? What if he's at his job and he's working really hard and he's really conscientious? He's not a low effort man. It might mean that he's not going to spoil you constantly, but then, it's just what I'm saying is that she can take a thing and then assign man bad. Now, maybe she's not assigning all man bad, but so quick for that to go there. We are primed. The propaganda primes us to think that way. I know, because I was propagandized before I understood who you guys are and what you want in life, and also more importantly, what you're not. Right? You're not oppressors. You don't want to chain anybody in the kitchen. You would like a wife. You would like a woman who would want to be a woman. And I'll tell you something else. The last thing I'll talk about. I give the church-going men, the Michael Knowles, I always use that example, type of guy, the do the right thing men and get married. I give them a lot of crap because of the pressure they put on the rest of the men in the name of God, right? And I'm like, really? Because they never seem to think that it's the woman's fault for anything. That's, you know what I mean? They seem to be blinded by some of the realities. They don't really look to family court. They sort of believe that, oh, these church-going women would never file for divorce. They're good and honorable and holy and all that. That's not the case. Now, if you're really involved in church and you've got a strong church community, you're very, very involved, yes, the statistics are better for those marriages, but they should be, completely zero divorces, zero or very small, right? For very big exception cases. Anyway, I give those guys a lot of garbage, but I will say something in their favor. I give them credit for, this is hard, for their optimism. I give them credit for still believing in the institution, right? And wanting to go forth regardless of the risks. There is there is some honor in that. I still strongly disagree with them and would love to have a real talk with them about the realities that men face and how shaming them and telling them do the right thing, blah, 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 and never requiring anything of the women in that situation. That's a huge problem. I'd love to know what they really would say to that. And I'm sure eventually I'll get some pastor on here to ask him. I genuinely want to know. I genuinely want to be like, but what would you say to the men who are like, hey, that's very risky for me. It's set up against me. Like, what are you going to say? Do the right thing? Like, if the church is, right, Protestant, Catholic, Orthodox, if they stood up to this whole, why do we even have state marriage and why do we have no fault divorce and etc. If they actually stood up for it, then I would be a little more generous to their side, but they don't. Anyway, I know I started off giving them some credit, and then I was like, it's hard. It's hard because it's completely unfair. And at the end of the day, they sound more like those women than they do, you guys. And so my goal is for there to be more understanding. Now, I don't feel like I need to get you guys to understand. I don't feel like that. I feel like you've been observing objectively for the most part from what I've heard from you and from the men in my life. They don't hate their exes, even though they went through, everything. Like, they don't hate them. Even my father, they don't have that sort of vengeful, animosity that way. That I can't really say that for the other side. But I would like there to be understanding. I would love to explain to women who men are, because I think that's something that is greatly missing, because men are not our enemy. They're not. They don't want to be. They're not. That's a lie. That's a lie that the overlords want us to believe. And it's not good for us. It's just not. None of it is. So none of the things that have been, most of the things that have been for women and like, it's not been good. Look at where we are. They'll tell us, oh, we're happier than we've ever been. Really? The facts don't show that. Just don't. You have eyeballs. You have a little bit of wisdom. You can see it. And once you see it, like everything else the overlords do, you can't unsee it at all. And it's a blessing and a curse, indeed. But men are not the enemy. And I want you guys, because you've been, branded this, it's difficult to walk around knowing that that's how you're seen. Feed your souls. You've got to combat all this animosity, right? And the way you do it is you feed your soul. You remember in whose image you're made. And I know that's hard for a lot of people because they think I'm talking about Sky Daddy or whatever, but I beg you, I implore you to please understand why you think it's silly to believe in a creator. Why do you think it's a Sky Daddy, right? Why do you think that? Who wants you to think that? Who benefits for you to think that? The state. They just do. So anyway, you benefit when you believe the truth, that you are made in his image. And I want you guys to look at God's creation, the trees, the bird, the sunset, the sunrise, and know that you're part of that creation, and feed your soul. Protect your peace at all costs, because everything's coming at you. I love you guys, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.